The interview. We'll talk about this in two parts. In this first set of videos, we'll talk about how to interview someone without dealing with any of the technical aspects, and we'll hit that in a separate set of videos. If you've never done this before, your first interview, you'll probably be anxious and feel unprepared and stumble over your words, and that's all okay. You'll get better. You may want to practice on some people that you feel comfortable with without even using a camera, just to get the feel for it. If you really want to torture yourself, record you during those interviews and watch yourself back to see what you can do to make your subject feel more comfortable and to help lead them in the interview. Because as we talk about this, one of the most important things you can do is to make the person you're interviewing feel as comfortable as possible so that they want to open up to you. The other big thing that you need to do is just to be ready for the interview. So how do you prepare? You want to think, what is this interview about? What's the story that you want them to tell? I never walk into an interview without a page or two or more questions. My clipboard, that's my security blanket. It has all the questions on it in a font that's big enough for my lousy eyes to be able to read, and with plenty of empty space for me to make notes as the interview goes along for follow-up questions or any other thoughts that come up. One of the biggest things I try to think of while prepping is, how do I want this finished video to begin and to end? For nonprofits, that most often means questions that get me that before and after. Who is this person and what challenge did they have before working with our organization? And what's a success? How did our organization help? I want a good opening sentence and a great final statement. And I'll often keep asking questions, a lot of times even the same question, just reworded, until I hear them say that opening line I need. Occasionally, I'll ask them to repeat what they just said, maybe to make it a complete sentence or to try to say it more briefly so that it makes it a better statement. I try to avoid that when I can, because sometimes it can start to sound artificial or scripted, but when I need to, I'll do it. Another trick that a teacher taught me, it takes that idea a step further. Write the entire script of what you hope they'll say, beginning, middle to end. What would make the greatest story that they could tell? Once you know all that, work backwards and create all the questions that can lead them to giving you those answers. You want to be prepared to go another direction if they start going a different way with their answers, or now you can use those questions and pull them back to the answers that you want. When you know the answers that you want, then you can be in control of the interview. So as you prep those questions, you want to find ways to keep them as open-ended as possible. Avoid questions that have yes, no, or one-word answers. So not, did you help them, but how did you help them? Instead of, when did you start volunteering? How did you start volunteering? That'll likely get you the when, but also a whole lot more. You'll notice how is a very useful word. How leads to the story instead of just the fact. Here's a great clip from an interview show called How I Built This. The host, Guy Raz, is talking about how his interviews work.
I feel like my job is to trigger memories. And what I'm trying to do is to trigger recollections and details of things through the questions I ask and how I ask them. Oftentimes we don't remember things until we're prompted to. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm on that journey and I'm experiencing the emotional highs and lows with that person. So at a certain point, you are rooting for them because you're in the movie with them.
Right, because you're like, if you're really in that moment with them, you don't know that everything's going to be okay.
So you want to look for those open-ended questions that are going to take the person back to that time that they're talking about. Another thing I learned a while back is to ask devil's advocate questions when you can. One that I loved when I worked with the Young Americans workshops was, so you're saying you got so much out of this workshop, but really, isn't it just singing and dancing? And what's great about this is it makes them defend the organization. They're going to argue with me because I'm saying the organization isn't that valuable, and they're going to tell me just how valuable it is to them. I would always get something great from that question. And here's a quick example of the answer I got from a school principal. When you say they need to have, because the devil's advocate side of it is,
sure,
they needed to sing, they needed to dance. Why is that valuable to the kids?
Well, I don't think they needed to sing or they needed to dance. I think they needed to feel like they belonged, and this gave them a new opportunity to do that. And as much as we do our best here to try to do that, within the academic setting, to have something like that to give them a sense of purpose, and have that extra experience, I think that's what they needed more than anything else.
Now, I usually prep my questions in at least 3 sessions. First time, I just put down whatever questions come to mind, like the obvious ones. How do you feel about the organization? How'd you get started? What's your favorite part of the program? That kind of thing. And that gets the easy ones out, and then I use those questions to start thinking, well, what would be great answers to those questions? Which usually leads me to new questions to try and get to those great answers. Then I'll step away from them and I'll let them sit in the back of my mind for a day or so. And I come back to them. I usually, first I'll just laugh at how simplistic the questions are, and I'll start to revise, but I'll dig a little deeper. I'll reorder them so that one question and answer might naturally lead into the next question. And that usually leads me to new questions as well. And I'll let that sit, and later I'll look at them a third time, maybe even more, to finalize the order, fix anything that looks wonky, and usually new questions are going to come to me then too. But if I haven't done those 3 passes at least on the questions, it's usually just not going to be as good of an interview because I haven't dived far enough into the prep to really be ready to talk to them.